Let's be real, some of the business advice out there sounds deep, looks cute on an Instagram post, but is actually terrible. Let's get into some of the worst business coaching advice you definitely should not listen to. Okay, the first one is charge your worth. If you have watched a lot of videos on business advice by different business gurus, you will have probably heard somebody say, charge your worth. And usually they say this in a way to get you to charge more. But I just want to really break down why this is bad advice. First of all, it's really vague and it's completely dependent on just emotions and feelings and really doesn't consider the market that you're in. And honestly, I think the reason why a lot of people out there give this advice is because it stops them from having to actually give you real cold hard facts and data. I remember when I first started my consulting business, I honestly had no clue how much to charge, and I was out here trying to better understand what the market was, but nobody is transparent with their rates, and it almost feels like they are trying to sell you in order to join their program so that you can have a better understanding of these things. And in my personal perspective, this idea of charging your worth can often lead people who don't have an understanding of the market to either severely overcharge or severely undercharge. So for example, I had a guy in a program that I was working with who was showing me how much he's planning on charging for a workshop and charging for speaking. And I was able to tell him straight up, hey, that number is actually way too low, and not just base it off of vibes and feelings, but tell him based on the market that you're in and based on the sort of clients that you're targeting, this is actually what you can be charging. And I also considered factors that he had a very polished brand. He also had some clients underneath his belt, so it's not like it's something that he hadn't done before, but I was able to actually give him a specific range or an indication that even if he doesn't, increase his rate today, he should be looking at moving towards a higher rate over the next year. On the flip side of that, it is possible to be charging too much. And that's something that people don't really want to consider, especially if you're following this advice of charging your worth, because it feels like me saying that is saying that you're not worth that. And that's actually not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that sometimes you can just be in a marketplace where clients are expecting a much lower rate, or you could be targeting clientele that just cannot afford what it is that you're charging. So for example, let's say you are running some sort of business where your primary clientele is students. It's going to be very difficult for you to charge $10,000 or $20,000 for your service because let's be real, students do not have that. So you're putting yourself in a position where you are pricing yourself out of a market. Your price is just too high, nobody can pay it. Or it's not to say that nobody can pay it, but there just isn't a wide enough pool of interested customers when your price point is that high. Or sometimes it's not the market, sometimes it's you, and nobody wants to hear that. But the reality is, if you're somebody who doesn't have an established business, you don't have an established brand, nobody knows who you are, people aren't referring you, or you don't have any sort of social media presence that would allow people to really be excited to work with you, well, that means that you just might not be able to charge as much as other people who are more established in your market. And remember, guys, all of this is not usually just based on your perception. It's based on the perception of potential customers, of people in the market of who you're trying to serve. And that's where the disconnect is. And that's why this idea of charge what you're worth doesn't really make sense, because you have to consider the marketplace that you're in and potential customers' perception of the value that you offer and the value that you provide. So an example of that is me. I have literally worked in business for over a decade. I've worked for huge businesses. I've worked for small businesses. I have been running my consulting business for 3 years now. However, there may be somebody who popped on the scene, let's say a year ago. They have a more established brand. They're able to psychologically connect with customers in a way that I might not be able to. Maybe they've really grown their audience and have been able to communicate their impact in a way better way than I've been able to. If that's the case, do you think the clients or the potential clients in our market care about the fact that I have a master's degree or that, I've been a professor who teaches at a college? They don't care about those things, right? They have their own perception of what is valuable to them. So we need to consider all of these aspects when determining our pricing. We cannot just operate off of vibes. And again, I really do not like this advice because it just doesn't give any concrete structure or direction, especially if somebody's new to a marketplace and looking to really understand how much they can charge. Okay, the second piece of bad business coaching advice that is out there is this idea that you do not need a plan, you just need to raise your frequency. Nope, I'm not buying it. You cannot sell me it, because here's the thing, guys. High vibes without high execution is a complete recipe for disaster, for burnout. You're gonna find yourself disappointed when you're not getting the results that you want. I'm not somebody who is against really focusing on energy, on manifestation. I believe in all of that for a fact. But what I really have an issue with is this idea that you do not need a plan and you don't need structure in order to really have a successful business. Because here's the thing, a lot of what people are selling or are preaching is something that will get you an immediate result. It might get you one client, it might get you one customer. But what I really focus on helping people with is that long-term, sustainable, profitable business. So it's not about next month, it's not about the month after that. It's about how can you build a business that you truly love and is profitable for years to come. And you do not even want to be in a position where you are just operating off of vibes for that, because ultimately it'll lead to stress, it'll lead to burnout. You really want to have a plan in place. You really want to have the systems in place that set you up for success and actually allow you to have a business that is aligned with the lifestyle that you want. So yes, some people out there definitely need to raise their frequency for a fact, but the reality is that is not what's going to allow you to have a successful long-term business. Okay, so staying on this idea of mindset, I'm going to give a controversial one right here, which is that mindset is everything. And I want to put a little asterisk next to this. I want to put a little bit of a star, because I absolutely believe that your mindset can transform the position that you're in if it's accompanied with the right action. And the reason why I say that is because there are people who their mindset is 10 out of 10. They have all of the self-belief. They could never have imposter syndrome. In fact, imposter syndrome is scared of them. They believe they have all of the skills. You know, they truly have it right when it comes to their frame of mind and starting a business. But what they're missing is the required action that accompanies it. So you can have the right mindset all you want, right? But if you're never getting out of bed, that means when it comes to achieving success, that person who might not have their mindset right, you know, they're working towards it, they're striving to get better, they might not have it as aligned as another person, but they're getting up and they're showing up and they're doing the work and they're executing on the plan that they have in order to achieve their goals, to achieve their dream life. That person, even though they might wake up and have doubts, that person, even though there might be a voice in their head telling them that they're not going to be able to do it, I'm telling you, in 365 days, that person will be further along to having the outcome that they want than the person who seemingly has their mind right, but is not taking the action to accompany it. So it's not that I completely disagree with the sentiment that your mindset is everything. No, I agree with that. But I always am very cautious of the people who that is the only thing that they're really selling you, is that you need to change your mindset. That is one part of it, but that's not everything. That's not all that's required. Next up on the list of bad business coaching advice is this idea that if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. It's really catchy, and I get this sentiment that they're trying to push, but ultimately, business requires you to do things that are uncomfortable if you want to achieve growth, if you want to achieve your next revenue milestone, if you want to achieve your next level. Oftentimes, you want to say no to something because you're uncomfortable with it, because it might be something you've never done before, because it challenges you in some way. A lot of the times, our initial reaction is, no, I don't want to do that. And the reason being is because our brain is trying to protect us, right? It perceives this challenge as danger. And it knows that with that danger comes stress And it knows that it will stress us out if we're to head down that path and take on that next thing that's going to challenge us. So if you were to go just completely based off of vibes and feeling like, oh, I don't want to do something, I'm not super excited to jump up and get it done, whatever it might be, that's the initial reaction, you are going to limit your potential for growth in the long term, and you're also going to limit your income potential. And the other thing is, we all know that when you are in the early stages of business and you are doing everything yourself, that you have to do things you don't want to do. You know, like, who wants to generate invoices and send them? Who wants to review and look back on meeting notes? Like, nobody wants to do a lot of these things, but you have to do them in order to provide the best client experience possible, and in order for your business just to be functional and running at a time where you haven't yet brought somebody else into your business to do these things for you. So you can't just chase a dopamine rush constantly. In fact, I would argue that an indicator that your business is probably doing very well and that you are achieving success is when it feels boring. It means that things are kind of on autopilot, that you have the right people in your business, that you have the right systems, that you have the right structure, and you're really able to operate in your zone of genius, and things just, you know, have this repetition flow, this ease to them. I would love to hear some of the worst business coaching advice you guys have seen floating around the internet or in person. Drop it down below in the comment section, and if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and also hit the subscribe button. It really helps with the algorithm. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.